Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free, Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
I'm Ray Samich, and I'd like to introduce you to my dear colleague and co-host and brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you this fine day?
Oh, wonderful, Ray. It is nice to be with you again. How are you live?
Excellent, excellent. No complaints. We're staying healthy. You know, we've numbers of my families have gotten COVID, but fortunately nobody has gotten it seriously. And we all keep going through and keep trying and playing the same game that we all are in every day. Want to welcome back our listeners. Yes, we are live here today, and thank you so much. However, you may be listening on radio or the internet stream or catching us on our YouTube channel as well at Stress-Free Living Radio. Thank you so much for being with us, whether you're live with us or whether you are listening to a pre-recording of this show. Ratanjit, as I've had some time to think here, because we haven't been together for a couple of weeks, the word perspective really pops up all around me all the time. People always say, well, that's your perspective. And this is what I think. Even if they're not using that word, that's what they're talking about. And it seemed to me that you always ultimately talk about the truth. What is our truth? And in some ways, perspective is kind of a synonym for the way you use truth. But in other ways, it doesn't matter what the truth is if I have a certain perspective. I'm not even considering what is truth. I am only considering what I think, what I feel about a certain issue. And once I have that perspective, or once anyone has that perspective, it seems like that dictates everything else about that particular topic, and they're not even open to another perspective. It seems to me that perspective is almost more important than anything else in terms of trying to communicate with people, trying to understand where they're coming from and build empathy so we can connect. And I don't know if we've ever talked about perspective, so I wanted to throw that out there today. Is it even real, or do we pretend that we have this perspective so that that's our excuse? That's our alibi for anything we want to say or do, because that's my perspective. What do you think?
Well, you know, when you live a life, the longer you live, and you end up installing certain filters in your system, and certain things you accept, and certain things are stopped by the filters, because basically we are all insecure. And as the insecurity, the certain kind of thinking, certain kind of belief, certain kind of way of having filters make us temporarily feel secure. So when you have a certain idea, certain way of thinking, and you feel more secure in that feeling, that becomes your perspective. So we do not explore continuously the truth, because whatever information we have, ultimately we find it changing, or history has changed, or geography or science or everything is constantly evolving. So when you are not into a student mode and constantly learning new things, and you rigidly form a perspective and look from only one window everything, and you would have erroneous picture in this. And we see that our society basically part in their own perspective. And as a consequence of that, we have close differences. We become enemies without having major problems. And this is all because of our filters, because of our insecurity, because of the perspective we gain.
I absolutely agree. And of what you said, there's so many different places. I agree with the result that you're saying perspective gives us. What I want to talk about is understanding how we gain these perspectives. How are we even in control? Like you say filters. Where do those filters come from? Are those part of our personality that's built in up front? Are they by our environment? Are they because of what our parents tell us, or what our friends tell us when we're going to school that shape that? Because it seems often that the perspectives that we have are different than our parents, or different than our siblings, our brothers or sisters, and yet we're raised in the same house, but we have a different perspective on things between brothers and sisters. And yes, we have certain friends that we hang out with and we enjoy as young people, but oftentimes the perspective, even within that friendship, are different. Those filters are different on certain topics, but they agree to disagree and move on because they have so many other things in agreement. So where do those perspectives come from? Where do those filters come from? Is that part of our personality?
You see, during our life cycle as a child, and depends on our experiences, when you have torturous, difficult childhood, and whatever has frightened you, whatever has compromised you, whatever has undermined you, becomes a filter. And you begin to see that person, that type of person, that type of situation always being wrong. And similarly, ultimately, all our perspective is developed because of our insecurities. We are basically insecure. And as we grow, our education makes us a little bit better. Our love around us make us a little bit better secure. Our parents, our society, our nation, or everything. So ultimately, we begin to look for security in different things, different beliefs, or religion make us secure, because whenever we are distraught, when we are sad, or when we cannot handle any situation, we end up praying. So anybody has seen God, anybody has seen anything, is all our perspective. So ultimately, it is the belief system which is formed because of our experience, because of our difficulties, because ultimately it is all attracted by our insecurities.
So let's take, and I never talk religion on this show, but I'm going to take a little subtopic there with religion. And I'm Catholic, and within the Catholic Church right now, there are so many perspectives, and that being a very large religion, a lot of people are Catholics, millions of people. It's not the most common in the world, but it's one that a lot of people can identify with because it's high profile. Right now, there's a lot of core beliefs that are either accepted or not accepted. And yet the people that are Catholic are still considering themselves Catholic, even if they don't believe with follow some of these core beliefs of Catholicism. And to me, that's their perspective. I can be Catholic, for example, and still believe in abortion. This is what some people are saying. I can be Catholic and still believe in that this is true or this isn't true. And yet, from my perspective, I'm still Catholic. okay, is what they're saying. Other people are saying, no, you can't be Catholic and have those beliefs because those are just not a part of Catholicism. And I've been in this argument with people, and they say, if I believe 90% of what the church says, then I'm going to say I'm Catholic, even if I don't believe in all 100%. And other people said, if you're not 100%, then you're not Catholic. So how does that argument come? That doesn't seem to have anything to do with insecurity. It's a mental game almost. It's a mental challenge in those cases where they simply say, 100% or nothing is one perspective. The other perspective says, well, I'm pretty close. I believe 90% of the time, so that's good enough. To me, that's perspective. What do you think that is in that case?
See, what I'm going to say may upset many people, but the truth is that all the religions of the world are man-made. And we should look at them and understand as a student, and we should learn from them. They are not, everything is never part in rigidity so that you cannot change. Because they are all man-made, they are not perfect. Although they are started with a prophet or a son of God or somebody who is considered to be incarnation of God. So this is again our belief system, because by having belief in that, it gives us some kind of a pseudo security. But ultimately, our security comes from having the insecurity to find the truth, to become a student, to continuously explore what is real. And that is why some of highly learned people who are constantly remain in the student mode are much more flexible, whereas certain very highly educated people become very rigid. So rigidity always comes from insecurity. Flexibility, open-mindedness always comes from security. When you are secure enough to explore something new and listen to something new, that means you have internal securities. And if you are closed-minded and you are afraid of having anything new enter into your brain, you are suffering from insecurity.
That's really interesting. I didn't think of that. Maybe that's obvious, but I've never thought of that before. You're saying that if you're more secure with yourself, with who you are and what your presence as an individual, then you're much more open to other ideas, to other people's perspectives and other people's thoughts than if I'm insecure. If I'm insecure, I'm much more rigid with where I'm at. Huh? Is that,
Yes. Yes.
Did I summarize that
Very
properly?
True. Very true.
Okay, I never realized that. So if I run into a very stubborn person who just will not even consider any variation of what they're thinking, it's because they're actually more insecure?
Yes. So to enter in their brain or have a conversation with them, the first thing you have to earn is trust with them. So when they begin to trust, their insecurity level gets lowered and they begin to listen to you. And all our security, or people who are very secure, who are open. See, openness comes from realizing that we are constantly learning. The more you know, the less you know, because it takes 1,000 PhDs or 10,000 PhDs to ultimately know for sure that you know nothing. It is when you graduate from high school, you know everything.
Mhm.
And it is constantly learning. So to give you an example, when we were in high school and I was learning physics, we are taught in laboratory that light always travels in a straight line because all the cameras, all the equipments are based on that theory. And when I went to college and suddenly we were told that light never travels in a straight line. So you showed a penny and the light comes around the penny and the light is wavelength. And when I met a friend who did his PhD in light, and after having a couple of drinks with me, he said, you know, we really don't know how light travels. There are only hypotheses which are explained 80%, 70%, 85%, but we never have any hypothesis which explain 100% of how light travels. So we really don't know the truth. So that only happens when you know more. The less you know, the more you feel you know. The more you know, the little less you know.
You realize you don't know. Yeah, no, that's very, very true. You know what I like that you just said a moment ago too, is that somebody who is very stubborn, if you build trust with them, you can possibly work to change that stubbornness, that perspective that they have. I'm thinking back to all my years in sales, and we would always say the person who was adamant about saying no, no, no was actually easier to convert to a yes, yes, yes than a person who was like, it doesn't really matter. You know, the person who really didn't have an opinion, who really wasn't sure, it was very difficult to get them to a yes. But somebody who's very stubborn with a no, if you build trust, if you explain where you're coming from, if you explain why this is something worth considering, if you take the time to build a relationship, very often you could get that converted in sales to a yes, and in life to a relationship. In life, converting that person who was disagreeing with you to suddenly maybe not agree with you 100%, but at least build a rapport, a trust, a relationship with that person. And that seems to fall in line as an analogy with what you just said. If in life, if we find people that are stubborn one way and we take the time to really open up to them and not necessarily convince them that they're wrong, but just build a trust of who I am and who you are, you build a relationship with those people.
Yes.
Some of those have ended up being my best friends, and they're people that I started the relationship with great disagreement.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, interesting. But I never realized there was a insecurity factor with there. That's the missing ingredient that I didn't understand before, is that they were using that stubbornness, those filters, just because they wouldn't consider anything else, and you have to break down those filters. So when we come back, we have to take a break. When we come back, now that we're a little bit more understanding, I'm a little more understanding of what perspective is caused by, I want to talk about breaking down those filters, how we can do that. If trust is the only way of doing it and the most important way, or if there's other ways that we can change our own perspectives or try to become more communicative with people and break down and change some of their filters. That's the next step of this process when we come back on Stress-Free Living. We'll be back in just a moment.
Yes.
All right. Anybody have any thoughts they'd like to add? I know you chatted with us, Sana, but I didn't have a chance to read it. I'm sorry.
I don't expect you to get interrupted while chatting.
That's okay.
That is the ultimate of today's show, I guess, what he just expressed. It's the best coming
Yeah.
out from him. We are witnessing all this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ratanjit, I'll read it if you didn't see it. Openness comes from the realization that we are constantly in a student mode. The more you learn, the less we know.
Yes, very true.
Brilliant thought she put on there. Thank you, Sana, for putting that down in words.
Pleasure.
I'm a man. I can only do one thing at one time. I can't read and talk at the same time.
Only women could do that.
Only women can multitask.
Thank you.
Dr. Singh, any thoughts before we go back?
No, everything is
Johnson.
fine. I fully agree that constant learning, I think I am always in that phase, and I feel how stupid I am now every day, after every day. The openness
Okay.
is the closed, I meet closed-ended people every day, but not even thinking, not even starting what is going on.
And you probably knew they were insecure. That's probably, you were
Right,
aware of that.
right.
Yeah.
I fully agree.
Very good. And we want to welcome Kim. Thanks for joining us, Kim. On a break here. We're coming back in a moment.
Good morning, Ray. Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm
Morning.
late.
Welcome. That's okay. Great to have you.
I missed you guys last week. Did you take a week off?
You actually took a couple off, but we're back here. Thank you. And we're back on the show. Welcome back to Stress Free Living. I'm Ray Samich with Ratanjit Sandhi. And once again, we are on our Zoom call and having the opportunity to interact with many of our special guests that are joining us. If you would like to be a part of our Zoom call, then let us know. You can send us a note through Facebook or email or our website. Messaging, however you want to do that, we'll give you our special link, and we'd love to have you join us as well. We used to make that much more readily available, but actually Zoom security stopped us from that. They said we're not able to give that out on that kind of a public basis, so we have to be a little more protective, but we'd love to have you join us. If you simply ask, you're invited. And Ratanjit, we did get some feedback from some of our guests on that particular break, as we always do. They always fill us with wonderful ideas. But I first want to explore what we left with before the break, because let's say we want to change our own perspective. And I don't know if that happens too often, because usually we think we're right. And if we're right, then we don't want to change anything about us. But there are times that we step back and say, you know, what I'm doing isn't working. Maybe I'm not able to keep a relationship. Maybe I'm not happy at my life, with my family, with my job, whatever it is. And we say, I need to shake some things up. This just isn't going right. So if I wanted to change my perspective on things, if I wanted to look at things differently than I have in the past, how do I do that? How do I change those filters? Do I have to somehow increase my security and reduce my insecurity before I can even go down that path?
Yes, it is possible. Again, the fundamental thing about, one of the things is when you have a perspective and your life is difficult and you cannot hold on a job, you cannot hold on a relationship. So you end up blaming everyone else. Once you get off the blame, and as a consequence of that, you end up going into depression. And many of those cases are real. And ultimately, to find somebody who is distorted, and again, it is amazing that people with higher IQ, people with more intelligence are more insecure than people with less intelligence. It is funny because intelligence all come from questions which are raised in your brain, and the answer lies in your heart. Can you see this?
Yes.
When I rotate this question, it becomes a heart. And all our questions originate from our brain. And the more question your brain able to ask, more insecure you end up becoming. And because you cannot find the answer, as a consequence, you end up destroying your own personal life. So you see this constantly. There are very, very intelligent people who have very high education and who have very high IQ end up ultimately destroying their life unless they become a true student. And then the same intelligence and the same higher brain power can help them continuously learn and continuously become humbler and continuously become trustworthy and continuously become a good listener rather than a talker, because everyone has a different perspective and you can learn from everyone. And knowledge seeker constantly listen, and that is one prime way to earn somebody's trust, when you become a good listener. Ray?
Yeah, your little demonstration, and for our radio audience, they couldn't see what you were spinning there, but it was a question mark, like a wireframe question mark, and when you spin it quickly, your brain sees the two side by side, which makes a heart. And so that's what you were demonstrating, with a question turning into a heart, which is the answer. Taking that concept, people that are more intelligent, have higher IQs, constantly want to use that brain because they have a magnificent, powerful brain that can comprehend and calculate and remember, have a tremendous memory, and all those other facets of the brain. So they want to use their brain as their way of understanding and learning and coping and everything else. But your heart, in that example, okay, is where we get the human emotion, is where we get the empathy, it's where we get the connection of a whole different level of life. And if we think too much, it's interesting. I just noticed this more and more in communications and movies and everything else that I see and transact in. People just say, just do it. Just do what your heart feels. Don't overthink it. Just do what you know is right within you, in your heart, in your whole body, in your soul, and just do it. Don't overthink it. And I think when you say all of these very intelligent people, they actually are overthinking. They're making things more complicated than they need to, because they're trying to analyze and figure everything out, where the true understanding comes in our heart and our relationships. So if we're connecting with other people and we're trying to really, make them feel loved and trusted and appreciated, it probably doesn't come from the brain. Our brain is maybe trying to even manipulate, take advantage of what we learned and what we thought through, and strategically, let me say this and let me talk about that, when really it's just from the heart, right? I mean, that's the way we ultimately connect.
See, basically, we consider as a human brain as our master. Human brain as our master, and we consider heart as something soft in us. So we constantly tell, use your brain, use your brain. So in reality, Ray, the heart is the master and brain is a servant. Brain is very powerful, creative tool we are gifted with. If you are guided by heart, your heart always wants to serve. Heart always want to listen. Heart always want to make a difference. So if you contact a person, your fundamental purpose is to serve, to make his or life comfortable. And you instruct your brain to find ways to help him to do service, to do kindness, to be of value. And brain is going to initially say, but what has he done? I said, never mind. Your role is only to find me a way how I can serve. So once you become a master of your brain, brain has no choice but to give you a very good creative ways to serve other person. So ultimately, we are born to die. So we either gather all these material things and become secure, or pseudo security, which I call, or we understand that I feel much better and happier when I bring happiness to somebody around me, somebody who I know or I don't know. So once you focus on adding value and serving, your life becomes meaningful. Your perspective becomes continuously searching for ways to help, to add value, and your life automatically falls in place. And your level of security continuously goes up.
See, it's so funny that you're saying all this, because I think we think, our brains, they're gonna using of words that show my brain and how limited it is. We think all the answers are in our brain. We think any of the problems that we have, we can think through them by using the power of our brain. I mean, I think that is just the way we operate, is that, okay, I've got a problem, whatever that problem might be. It's a relationship problem, it's a money problem, whatever it might be, is I've got this brain and I'm given this brain to think this thing through and come up with a solution. And all that seems to do, because our brain usually is parked in self-centeredness, is it tries to figure out a way to make the situation work that benefits me.
Yes. What is
right?
it in it
And
for
so,
me?
yeah, and that's the perspective of the brain, if you will, using that word. The filters of the brain say, how am I going to benefit most from this?
Yes.
So anytime I'm trying to answer a problem, solve a problem, I'm doing it with my brain centered on me.
Yes.
And so if I'm trying to go back to my question from 10 minutes ago, if I'm trying to improve my life and change my life in a meaningful way, and start to, thinking about having better relationships and better finances and more happiness and all those kind of things, ironically, my brain is going to tell me all these things that are probably going to lead me down the same path that I've already been on, because I probably don't have relationships because I've been too self-centered.
Yes.
And the brain is just going to keep me on that same path.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, it's if you really think it through, there's no wonder why we are having our problems, because we've been trying to solve all of them only using our brain.
Yes.
And our brain, if you say that our real purpose is to serve others, and our brain is only focused on serving us, making our life better, no wonder so many of us are miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk about oneness. There's only one source, and thinking in oneness. If your human body is all separate organs, your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, your liver, and all are separate. But we only are healthy when they all operate in oneness, operate in single purpose of helping the body. Now, what happens is, if I have a scratch on my nose, my finger does the scratch on my nose. And when I have a itch on my finger, thinking through brain, I expect my nose to scratch my finger. That is ridiculous, right? In oneness, you only serve and somebody else end up serving you. So reciprocation goes out the window. You end up helping somebody, and brain always tells you that you expect help from that person because you have helped him. But somebody else is going to end up helping you, because in oneness, the whole universe end up having is basically operating in oneness. And in oneness mode, without seeking a reciprocation for your good deeds, you continuously perform your good deeds and don't expect that person, that entity, that organization to pay you back. Somebody else is going to help you. And once that is understood, life automatically falls in place.
So I want to put a bow around this particular thought. It was about changing perspective, changing my own perspective, changing other people's perspectives to try to open up our relationships. We can't really do that through our brain, right? We have to do that basically by connecting either with ourselves and understanding with ourselves how to use our heart, or how to reach other people with our heart to be able to introduce to them the idea that their perspective may need to be tweaked, because we now build a trust, to build relationship with them. So if we want to change perspectives in ourselves or others, it comes down to don't overthink it, just connect with them. Use our heart to open up, right? To listen to them, to understand them, to try to have empathy for where they're at and where their perspective is coming from. And that's the channel to break their perspectives down and build our relationship. Would that be true?
Yeah, that's very true. There is another idea, which is our society basically focuses on all the laws are made to punish bad deeds. What in oneness? See, supposing I want to hang a picture, I want to put a nail in the wall, and I have nail in my left hand. If I'm right-handed, the hammer is in my right hand, and I'm hitting the nail, and some distraction happened, I end up hitting my thumb. And my thumb is bleeding, and suddenly that very hand which hit the left hand, right hand is going to grab the thumb and console the thumb, and whole body is going to be in pain. I'm not going to sue my right hand for hitting the left hand, because we are operating in oneness. So in our society, if that is practice, oneness is practice, if somebody does a harm to the society, we have to prevent him first from continuously doing the harm and change his perspective, change his way of thinking. So rather than putting him into prison, which is supposed to be correctional institution, they are basically punishing you, and you harden a criminal which is not a criminal. And this is not doing any good. We are only 4% of the total population of the earth, and we have 25% of the prisoners locked up. Right?
Okay. Yeah. Very interesting. All right. I've got one more. Since I came up with this topic, usually you do, brother, but today I did. And I had a couple of other things saved. I had one other thought that I really want to come back and talk with you about. And that is relative to opening our perspectives to other things beyond our humanity, beyond, more into our divinity, more into our place in the solar system, our place in creation. And because I think that may be the most powerful perspective we have on who we really are. So we want to take after the quick break here, I want to come back and explore how we could open up our perspectives to who we really are as individuals and as part of oneness. We'll be back in just a moment to explore that last part of our perspective on stress-free living. Stay with us. Okay, we've got a short break here, about 90 seconds. If anybody would like to check in.
Yeah, Kim, we didn't continue the conversation with you. So wonderful to have you back on our show. So you have any comments?
I love your comment about the body organs not working independently and the whole idea of oneness, because in my business, building business relationships, many times I would give, and then be hurt if it wasn't reciprocated. And I just got so much freedom out of what you just shared in the last segment. Thank you for that, because my heart is to give. And I think that looking at it as oneness universally, not just with a particular individual or having any expectation, just gives me access to freedom that I did not have before this conversation. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, I agree with that. She's right on. We want to give, but we also want to get back. And if we can forget that last part and just keep on giving, we'll be happier.
And I won't
Anybody else got to
reject it? I won't feel condemned, rejected. I won't be so attached to the outcome with a specific individual. I can just be, and it won't impede my ability to do that.
Yes.
Because I love the giving space. I love that.
And that's where the insecurity comes in, because then we doubt ourselves, right? Maybe we didn't do that right, or we didn't say the right thing, or we hurt their feelings or whatever. We make it about us. It's not about us. Yeah. Beautiful. Anybody else in a very short window here? Sana sent us another beautiful message. I got to keep your text here. These are real for your chats. Although the purpose of human life is to serve, add value, make your heart a master, brain an implementer. Perspective should be always to seek ways to add value. Beautifully spoken. We're back on. And we are back on Stress-Free Living. Ratanjit and Ray, yours truly, Ray Samik, with you, talking again as we do during our breaks with our fabulous Zoom guests. We just love having them as part of our program. Ratanjit, it's so invigorating, isn't it? Inspirational for us to interact with our guests, a few of our listeners by way of the Zoom, and know that what we're saying is making sense, and that everyone doesn't just think we're a couple of crazy guys. It's helping people, which is what we want to do. We want to reduce your stress in this world, most definitely. Ratanjit, I want to take the last 10 minutes of our show. And I know that you have always been oneness. I mean, that is your mantra, beautiful mantra of our oneness. But so many of us are just caught in the reality that we are a human being that wakes up every morning, with the pains of life, whether they're physical pains of whatever it might be, you know, a bad knee or allergies or a disease or whatever it is, we are stuck with whatever our body is experiencing. We're stuck with whatever our human relationships are, our human responsibilities are. And on a day-to-day basis, it's hard for our perspective to think that there's more. We're so buried in the fact that we've got all these bills and all these responsibilities and all these fears and all these concerns and worries and problems that we're facing, that it's hard for us to ascend and to say, but it really doesn't matter because we're just a spiritual being having a human experience. As beautiful as that thought is, and as often as I try to remind myself of that, our perspective is that we're here for a short window of time and we can't even enjoy it the way we really want to because we have so many concerns. And the very best that many of us do is take the time to enjoy those special moments. We enjoy looking out at the beautiful lake on a sunset, or we enjoy a vacation where we can just be carefree for a week or whatever it is. And then we come back though, that sunset goes down and we go back to our life, or the vacation is over and we go back to our life. So how do we, getting to the point, how do we change our perspective every day to realize that we are a spiritual being having a human experience, and don't get so concerned about every worry and problem with our life and every aches and pains, mental or physical? How do we change our perspective to remind ourselves that these things are important now, but in the scope of all eternity, of all spirituality, they're a minor blip on the screen?
Well, that's a wonderful question. No, imagine that we are going to a different planet, and it is not possible for us to survive just in this human body, or there is a very special spacesuit which is created, which does its own thinking, its own heating, its own consideration. And you have different colors and different textures of the spacesuit. So now you are in this new planet, you are working there, you are helping each other, you are making a difference through the spacesuit. And if you consider that you are into the spacesuit, and it is very similar to that we are on Earth. When we are on this Earth, in order for us to live and feel and survive, we are placed into the human body spacesuit. The human body is not us. Human body is a spacesuit. And if you attach yourself to the human body, your brain make you think you are the human body. This is your hand, this is your leg, this is your face, this is your kidneys, this is your heart. And all these things, brain also tells you that it has limited time. They can get infected by virus, they can get sick, they can kill this human body. So forever, if you are thinking yourself as a human body, you will be always insecure, because there's no way you can extend your human body life indefinitely. One day, this is going to go to demise, it's going to end. But what empowers this human body, what brings life in this human body, remains alive. It was there before it entered the human body. It will be there after it leaves the human body. So once you realize the real you is not the human body, the real you is the power which enlivens the human body, your security, automatically falls into place. And you use the human body, you take care of the human body, you make sure this human body performs in optimal condition by having certain disciplines of eating and exercise and thinking, which enhances proper use of the human body. But you always remain mindful of the fact that you are not the human body. You are the enlivening force which is enlivening this human body. As a consequence, your perspective of life completely changes and you have a built-in security. And the knowledge you gain in the worldly sense basically is going to be utilized to serve other human body and environment. So basically, you are constantly focusing on adding value through this tool, this machinery, this equipment, which we call as human body. And the operators of this human body is you, which is the divine power, which is all one. Because the light bulb, when it's lit, is all connected to a single powerhouse. The light bulb, without that electricity, is useless. And our human body without the life is a dead meat. And our human body basically gets enlivened, just like a light bulb gets enlivened by electricity. We get enlivened by one power, which is directly connected to the supreme power, which is live wire connection to us. So we are all one power, which is put into different human bodies.
I like both of those analogies. The electrical power works for me because I do believe that there is God, and I do believe that that power comes from him. But for everybody, whether they believe in a superior supreme being or not, I think they can connect to that spacesuit idea. That analogy is very powerful, and it's so simple, but it really explains it all. That if I think of me going into a spacesuit and relying on that for life on this other planet, on this other world, and I have to be in that in order to survive. I have to be in that in order to function. And so as long as I'm in that, everything is going to work fine. But I also know that there's going to be a day I'm going to have to take that spacesuit off, and it's going to be over on that planet. I'm not going to be able to be there anymore. But as long as I'm in it, I'm living. That's a real simplistic analogy to think of, well, that's actually my human body. I'm actually, it's not my human body wearing the spacesuit. It's my spiritual being wearing a human body spacesuit. That's a pretty easy concept to relate to. And it's one that, maybe for people that are looking for that reminder, like me, maybe I got to get a picture of a spacesuit and put that on my bathroom mirror as one of the first things I look at every morning, just to remind me of that. And because that's very empowering. It truly is something that, changing my perspective that way is a very empowering thought. It's a very empowering reality. And it's something that, will not allow us, just as we talked about with Kim there during our call, we seem to do things in our life that limit us, that harm us accidentally. Crazy brain's supposed to make it better, but they end up making it worse. But if we just can take this different perspective here on who we really are, then certainly we can enjoy life to its fullest. And then when that life is over, enjoy the next one to the fullest too. So Ratanjit, thank you for all. If no thought, go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
We end up imprisoning ourselves. The true freedom happens once we allow our heart to take leadership and brain to become a servant.
Beautiful. Ratanjit, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your love with all of us. So good to be back with you again live today. Appreciate you being here, as always. And so many of our other great listeners that are here and our guests, we appreciate all of you. And we wish you all the very best this week. Remember, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.